Will we get a hard landing or a soft landing? A potential global economic slowdown, critical elections in the US, which are already unprecedented, and heightened geopolitical tensions with flashpoints from the Middle East to Russia, Ukraine, to China and Taiwan that could easily spark major escalations. And those are just some of the known unknowns. So how does one position a portfolio to best navigate these choppy waters? Well, multimillionaire, entrepreneur, venture capitalist, and investor Gary Cardone says his second largest position in this environment is Bitcoin. And he joins us to explain why and give us his outlook for 2024. Gary is the CEO and founder of Cardone Digital Ventures. His extensive expertise spans energy, real estate, financial services, and Web 3.0, earning him a reputation for predicting and navigating radical market shifts and trends. Gary began his career in energy commodities and helped shape the natural gas sector in the US through his work with Natural Gas Clearinghouse, overseeing more than 30% of natural gas acquisitions for the US and Canada. And Gary was also the architect of the UK's National Balancing Point, known today as one of the most reliable energy trading hubs in the world. He was also one of the youngest ever CEOs of a Fortune 50 company. And after finding success in energy and natural gas, he ventured into real estate, payments, and financial technology. And here to Kitco. So good to have you with us, Gary. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. I think we should end this conversation now because it's probably at the very peak of your introduction. Thank you for the kind words.
That is the abbreviated bio, Gary. Just want to give our viewers a little bit of a background on you so they know why they should pay attention when you have something to say. And you certainly have some very interesting and insightful things to say. And I'll start off with what we touched on when we spoke offline. And you said that currently your second largest holding is Bitcoin. So let's start there. What percentage of your portfolio is Bitcoin, percentage-wise?
As a percentage, it's about today. True of the Bitcoin community, they seem like, hey, this is all going to end the financial industry. I call it heroin because it's the
reunification of China with Taiwan is inevitable. So certainly no. Because lots of known.
Having gone through this before, we always underestimate the change that occurs from these type of events.
And this is your, and at 30%, it's your second largest position. I'm going to get into the why, but before we do that, this is straight Bitcoin, or is this Bitcoin as well as Bitcoin-related companies like miners or other companies like MicroStrategy, for example?
This is straight Bitcoin.
Straight Bitcoin. So 30% of your portfolio is straight Bitcoin going into a 2024, which, as I've touched on, has many, many, many volatile triggers, lots of known unknowns and also unknown unknowns. I mean, as I touched on at the top, we know the Fed is most likely going to pivot. We are anticipating big changes for the US economy, some saying hard landing, some saying soft landing. Who knows? We've also got major, major geopolitical tensions, as I touched on, everything from the Israel-Gaza war to Russia-Ukraine war going into its second year to escalating tensions with China and Taiwan, with President Xi saying the reunification of China with Taiwan is inevitable. So certainly no shortage of volatility triggers. What is your macro outlook for 2024, your 10,000-foot overview of what we can expect for 2024?
Chaos and confusion.
All right. Chaos and confusion.
It just seems like we're at the precipice of everything breaking down. down. We have a Fed pal who thinks he's in control of everything, and he's in control of everything until a large sovereign like China releases trillions of dollars or yuan into the marketplace. You got Europe has to do something. I mean, this debt deal they just announced, I was reading through, it's so complicated. It's a promise to do nothing. I just think we're going to see more flooding of heroin all across the financial industry. I call it heroin because it's the best analogy. You know, junkies either rehab or they die. And this mechanism of being able to print money, it's just too easy. If I was in control, I would print money.
Mhm.
I would print and I would print and I would print and I would print until the patient is either dead and someone else has to take care of them. I mean, I think people are grossly underestimating how long this can go on. And that's true of the Bitcoin community. They seem like, you know, hey, this is all going to end tomorrow. But I think it's very difficult to determine how long a Fed can print. And quite frankly, I think most of the population is happy when they print. So it solves voting, it solves unrest. And I think, quite frankly, tightening to 500% from zero in 6 months, that was insanity. Zero was insanity. It's just very unstable. It's very difficult to make economic decisions on large blocks of investment strategy for a family that are based on no fundamentals whatsoever. I mean, we had a war. We were talking yesterday when 9/11 happened, the stock market went down, what, 27% in 10 days? And in Israel, when the Israeli thing went off, you know, a month or so ago, the stock market went up 2%. Now, explain that to me. For me, it's really fundamentally unexplainable. So it seems to me like someone's pulling the strings behind the curtain, and that's really hard for me to make investment strategy behind. So that really is what leads me to Bitcoin, because it takes me to a safe haven place. But I think we're probably going to be at war this year. and I'm not even sure we're going to have an election. It's to me, this is a really, really important period in time.
You know, Gary, as you say that, I genuinely get chills down my spine. And we touched on this yesterday, and I was expecting you to say this, and still hearing someone like you, someone that is experienced in the world of financing, in the world of macroeconomics, say it so matter of fact that you think we're going to have a big war and we may not have elections is a very chilling prospect. So let's unpack that. Let's start off with a war. You said offline that you think we'll know if we're in World War III in about 4 to 5 months' time. Elaborate on that.
Well, I think we have an election, right? We have an election in November, hopefully. Everybody's talking about whether we're going to have a fair election. Hell, I'm just worried about having an election. There's chaos and mayhem going on all over the world. I don't know how a stock market goes up when, you know, an event bigger than 9/11 happened. I don't get it. Seems unstable, sounds unstable, feels unstable. You speak to people that are living in New York like yourself, and I don't hear a lot of happy people living there paying inordinate taxation. And all your billionaires are moving out of town, so your taxation by default is going to go up if you stay there, just as it is in California, and just as we said it would go up in California. For the past 30 years, we've been saying this. That California would have a major problem, and it's happening. So you have 22 million people that have been displaced out of the Ukraine. They are women, children, male and female, and I don't know how Europe handles 22 million people. Okay, they're already broke. If the euro breaks apart and the eurozone breaks apart, which I believe that the entire eurozone construct was like paper mache, the UK were made fun of for exiting the EU, and I actually maintain that they never joined the EU because they retained the right to print those £50 notes. So I don't think that the United Kingdom was ever a part of the EU. They don't produce anything. They have no energy resources. They have no agriculture. I'm not making fun of them. It's just a fact, okay? Europe doesn't produce anything. And so if you got 22 million girls, boys, and children flooding into Europe, who's going to take care of them in the hospitals, the housing, food, the water? And that was before, or that's after the entire Euro constructs just kind of failed. You slammed 11 countries together, 11 cultures, and you're expecting them all to be held together by some notes that are printed with the name Euro on them. So massive debt. I don't know how you work yourself out of this unless you just flood the whole market and we go. This is my prediction. In Europe, they will place multiple trillion-dollar bonds under the guise of clean energy, and they will nuclearize the entire landscape of Europe. That will then literally, there will be very little imports of fossil fuel into Europe. which will flood the rest of the market, the rest of the entire world. I don't think we're ever going to see $100 oil again. If this plays out correctly, which would be that the governments, to hide the abuse of how they've treated, taxation, they will launch a monster bond, call it the nuclear green era. And man, that is going to have severe consequences on the marketplace. So I could see a massive recession. I could see a depression. But before any of that, I think it's just easier to claim war, a big bad boogeyman, than it is to talk about the incompetency of the politicians. I hate to be so negative, but I think that's where we're at.
Well, let's revisit the point you made about US elections before we fully sort of start to speculate how this war unfolds, because you're saying that you think elections in the US may not happen in 2024, that would be unprecedented. We've never canceled elections before in the United States of America. Through other wars, through pandemics even, and yes, many would question whether those elections were in fact free and fair. That's a whole other debate, but we've never actually canceled elections in the United States. When you say you think that this is a scenario for 2024, how likely do you think this is? Is this like, a far tail risk of less than 1%? Or do you think that this is something that's a real likelihood? Give this to me, if you will, in gambling odds.
Well, maybe cancels. I didn't mean to say cancel. But you and I are now having a discussion here, and people are willing to actually spend minutes, if not hours, on, hey, does Trump even make it to the ballot? Does Biden make it to the ballot? I mean, we're asking really fundamental questions like, hey, the two guys that are in the lead, do they even show up?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had this conversation about, the death of one of these people. Like, one of these guys could be assassinated. And it's stunning to me that people are willing to have the conversation. It's actually something that is worth discussing and considering.
Yeah.
Look, I just think we're in a highly unstable time. So listen to the alarm going off, and something's going off in New York right now. You're probably like, hey, what the hell is going on?
You know what? I think it's poetic. As we're talking about this, as you're raising the alarm, quite literally hearing alarms going off in New York. So certainly echoing your sentiment and amplifying what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, you make a very valid point in terms of Trump. Well, we don't know, even though he is the Republican favorite, according to the polls. We know that, Colorado's trying to take him off the ballot. We'll see how. How the Supreme Court handles that one. But with all of these other legal actions against him, you're quite right. We don't even know if he'll represent. And while Biden is theoretically claimed to be the Democratic nominee, yeah, the conversation, the buzz is that it won't actually be Biden potentially representing the Democratic Party. And it's not just buzz. I mean, we had one of the leading Republican candidates, Vivek Ramaswamy, call it out in one of the debates, saying, let's end this charade. Let's know who we're really going to be running against. Is it Biden, or is it, and this is Vivek Ramaswamy's words, Michelle Obama or Gavin Newsom, perhaps, or somebody else. So, yeah, I can definitely see why this election has more, question marks hovering over it than others. But you're saying that this sort of narrative and discussion is a big theme in the circles that you're in terms of how people are positioning themselves and financially going into 2024.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was with a gentleman this morning, and he's moving into Bitcoin for this very, very concern. At the same time,
How can you trust the reviews you're reading? Introducing FakeSpot by Mozilla. Whether on your phone or computer.
Okay, the adoption of Bitcoin, where it becomes this, and I can't live that way and worry about it. I have to believe that, someone is sane minds are finally going to come about, but you cannot keep pushing morphine and heroin into this body, free capital, just print, And at some point, we don't have some reckoning, right? Like, real estate goes up because there's there's probably a whole conversation, but I think we're probably 30% underpriced on all energy in the United States and Canada. So that's enough for me, Michelle. I don't need to know anymore. Like someone knew something happened. I don't even listen to the whole Israeli construct, the story, because I'm not sure anything I'm hearing, unless you can show me pictures and endorsements and written documents. I just think most of this it's stirring the pot. So I think they'll do it wherever they can do it. And a cyber attack in the United States would be very, very impactful.
Flash with Houthi terrorists, militants backed by Iran launching drone and missile attacks, causing significant disruption. And President Xi vowing to prevent anyone from splitting Taiwan from China in any way, reiterating that a reunification of China and Taiwan is, quote, inevitable, and that it would be unstoppable. And this comes as Taiwan is preparing for crucial presidential and parliamentary elections on January 13th. And then, of course, we've also got the Middle East. We've got the Israel and Hamas war, which so far has been contained to that region, but we are seeing a surge in escalation in the Red Sea with Houthi terrorists, militants backed by Iran launching drone and missile attacks, causing significant disruption to shipping routes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, which I remind our viewers accounts for about 10% of the world's trade flow. And we know that the US is starting to take action against this, fighter jets shooting down several drones. So that is set to escalate, and they're now declaring the establishment of a coalition aimed at enhancing security measures in the Red Sea. That can very quickly turn into something big. And then, we've also have Iran moving ahead with its nuclear ambitions. And to that end, Israel allegedly taking out a top Iranian official, Sayed Razi Mousavi, in Syria. And he's allegedly in charge of coordinating missiles and other weaponry to Lebanon's Hezbollah terrorist group, which has been shelling the north of Israel. So Israel hasn't commented on this, but it seems that it was most likely Israel behind this attack. So, Gary, I bring up these big points and ask you to put on your geopolitical strategist hat on. And where do you think is the most likely flashpoint that does bring about this war, which I know you're not rooting for at all, but you're saying could happen?
Yeah, I think the flashpoint's going to happen wherever. Look, this isn't just happening by chance, right? It seems to be. And I would hate for this to turn into a political conversation, because I'm not a political person really usually, but look, the Israeli thing happened. First thing we heard from the CIA and Mossad was that it just caught them off guard. Now, I look for anomalies, okay? I look for people that are telling fibs, and when people tell fibs, their stories don't line up. For the CIA and Mossad, that is basically the CIA equivalent in Israel. Mossad's credited for being the greatest, intelligence organization to ever exist on Earth. They both told us that they didn't know anything was happening. And then 24 hours later, when people said, "Hey, bullshit, okay, like we're going to call you out as that you're either incompetent or you did know." Now, hey, we did know. So that's enough for me, Michelle. I don't need to know anymore. Like someone knew something happened. I don't even listen to the whole Israeli construct, the story, because I'm not sure anything I'm hearing, unless you can show me pictures and endorsements and written documents. I just think most of this it's stirring the pot. So I think they'll do it wherever they can do it. And a cyber attack in the United States would be very, very impactful. Have I lost you?
No, you certainly have not lost me, Gary. I'm following everything that you're saying, and the how this attack happened has certainly raised lots of question marks within Israel and outside of Israel, and there are various theories as to how this could have happened, especially considering the domestic division within Israel ahead of this, with much of the country actively against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his administration. And it certainly has caused a lot of questioning as to exactly how an attack of this nature was able to take place, and certainly something that I'm sure will be investigated further. But I'm sensing from you that it whether it comes from an escalation in the Middle East, whether it comes from an escalation with China and Taiwan, whether it's the European situation, Russia, Ukraine, or some other flashpoint that gets out of hand, or a major cyber attack, which is certainly a probability, it doesn't matter, because to you, all roads lead to Bitcoin. So let's unpack that. Why Bitcoin? Why is Bitcoin your safe haven in all of this uncertainty?
Well, first off, it's a product it's an invention. Let's think about this as an invention, right? As a 21st century invention. Greatest investment opportunities that allowed you and I gold. I do own silver. What a chance. I don't think they can screw it up any worse. Right. We're going through a massive change from night. No one turns anything off in the Western countries. No one. That tells me energy is not priced correctly. That tells me there's too much of energy. Right? If we're wasting it.
For just, well, why don't you give us the odds of how likely do you think this war is, or a cyber attack, or a major election disruption is for 2024? What kind of percentage would you allocate to that?
I'll be staggered if something substantial, what most people would refer to as a black swan, I will be massively surprised. In fact, I would make a $50,000 to $100,000 bet that sometime between now and August, there is some event that we like, wow, a COVID-19, 9/11 type event. I can't tell you what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Bigger than Ukraine, bigger than Israel current, bigger than all the people that are protesting that nobody wants to talk about across major cities all over the world. Like, that's happening right now. Nobody wants to talk about it, but it's happening, right? Look, Michelle, I think we're already at civil. I mean, this is going to really freak people out, but I think we're at civil war in the United States. When the red politicians and the blue politicians, whatever that means, can't agree on what pencil to use, we're pretty much at war. We just don't have muskets pointed at each other yet. But you can't say that we have a lot of agreement on anything. And if you've ever been in a relationship, just a simple relationship, if you can't agree on basic principles, you're at war every day. And so when does it escalate? It usually escalates when someone wants to hold their position in space. right? They want to hold their position. They want to hold their old world. I don't like change any more than you do, or anyone else, but I'm pretty sure if I'm a monopoly or a cartel and I'm on the inner club, and there are inner clubs, it took me 40 years for somebody to confirm there are clubs that you and I will never be invited to, ever. It's just not, our DNA, our bloodline, just not going to make the cut. Most of those people, if I was there, I would not want to lose that position either. I mean, I don't want to lose my little comfortable position here in St. Pete. I don't want to go to war. But I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if something massively significant doesn't happen in the next 6 months. Sadly.
Yeah. All right. Sadly, indeed. So some kind of black swan incident, not sure what it is, but you have it as a high probability for, I guess before the elections in 2024. On the other,
and then can I just interrupt you real quickly?
Go
and
for
then
it.
I think gold and silver will grossly outperform Bitcoin. But it is only under that circumstance, in my opinion, that gold and silver will outperform Bitcoin. They have not outperformed Bitcoin in the last 10 years, 13 years, or 5. They have not. Okay. And it's actually weird because you would think gold would be a perfect setup, right, for a couple of incidences that have occurred in the last 5 years. And at $4,000, you're going to find a lot more gold than there is today. And that's why gold's never been able to do this. There isn't, at $6,000, how much gold could you find? I'm pretty sure 40% of the gold supply sitting around people's necks at some price will come off their neck, and it will be sold to a pawn dealer. The China thing is like, yeah, inevitable. But is it this century or next century?
right. Well,
I want to buy your house. I can pay you cash for your house, no matter what condition it's in. Do you own an ugly, rundown house that you just want to get rid of? Let's be real. The time and money you'd be spending fixing up an old, ugly house is not worth the trouble. It could be months until it's even in listing condition.
she did not give a specific timeline on that, but it seems to be sooner rather than later. But you're saying that gold would outperform in a scenario where this black swan event happens, and a higher gold price will see people taking very different actions when it comes to their gold. Let's go to the scenario where the world does not blow up. We do not have a black swan event, but the